I was brought home by Miss Peng's family. Every day, she dresses me like a doll. She locked me in the doll room and made me wear all kinds of short dresses. When she's in a good mood, she will make me look beautiful and take me out for afternoon tea with her. But when she's in a bad mood, she will use all kinds of ways to punish me. She said, "You are my doll, you can never escape." I was hiding in a small alley next to the building, occasionally looking back warily. I raised my hand to wipe the blood on my nose, the wound from being beaten by other people for no reason. Because I accidentally opened a hole in their territory. Now, I am wandering, or rather, running away, because my parents divorced early. They're like soccer, no one wants me. Finally, the court handed me over to my father a month ago. My father's company went bankrupt, owing a large sum of money. He took the money and fled abroad, abandoning me without hesitation. Now, creditors are frantically looking for me. I hadn't eaten anything for 3 days, I was dizzy, and almost passed out. Just passing through the alley leading to the main road, a car stopped and appeared in front of me. I fell to the ground in fear, thinking the creditor had found me. But when I raised my head, I saw a pair of long, white legs. I looked at those legs. Their owner was a short girl, but her temperament was extremely noble. She frowned slightly, looking down at me from above. Her body exuded a scent that was completely different from her surroundings. In my eyes right now, she is like a shining princess. Inferiority and shyness made me unconsciously step back. She watched me for a moment, then said with an amused look on her face, "Follow me home. I want you to be my doll." I was surprised, not understanding what she meant. She didn't explain further and got in the car directly. I watched her car leave through the car window. She never looked at me again. A woman wearing dark glasses got out of the car, followed behind, and threw me directly into the car. Before I could react, the car was already running. She told me that girl's name was Tanuakvai, the young lady of the family. It's rare for anything to pass your lady's eye. I should cherish this honor. Honor? I really can't imagine. What honor is there in being treated like a doll? Now I'm smelly, dirty, and nowhere is clean. It seems to have nothing to do with the lovely dolls in the glass cabinet. But I know, Tati is one of the top 100 corporations in the world and the leading enterprise in the country. When I come to Tajia, I will no longer have to endure 3 days of hunger, wind and rain, but will have to endure being a doll for that perverted monster. Before continuing to watch the video, please click like and comment to support the channel. If you find it interesting, you can donate to me to help me produce more interesting content. Thank you very much, everyone. With a complicated feeling, I followed her home. It is a magnificent villa located on a coastal peninsula. The woman wearing dark glasses told me, "Young lady likes to be alone, so this villa is hers alone." But I'm not a person, just her doll. Even the maid and housekeeper only come when she needs it, but never stay here. Before leaving, the housekeeper told me to listen to the lady and not to disobey her. I nodded innocently. I clearly know the difference between me and Tanuakvai. She is a noble princess, and I am just a speck of dust. I stood bewildered in the hall until Tanuakvai slowly walked down the spiral staircase. She had changed into cute pajamas, her slightly ruffled hair still had a few drops of water. Cute but no less beautiful. She looked at me from above, her deep eyes carrying something fragile. After a while, she coldly spoke, "Go take a shower and change clothes. I prepared a huge mansion for you," but she led me to her room. A luxurious lady's room, a princess's room in a fairy tale. Steam rising from the bathroom carries a fragrant floral scent. I carefully showered and then cleaned the entire bathroom. But when I put on the outfit Tanuakvai prepared for me, I was completely dumbfounded. I looked at myself in the mirror, my eyes wide open. It's a cute short dress. Wearing it, my skinny body looks even smaller. My face turned red. I was about to go out and ask the young lady if there was any mistake, but I saw that she was already asleep in bed. The lady is very beautiful, even without makeup, even when sleeping. I couldn't help but come closer to look at her exquisite face. She looked more and more like a beautiful doll, but I quickly shook my head. How could Danuakvi be a doll for others to look at and play with? She was born a princess, cherished by everyone. I don't know when, my eyelids started to feel heavy. The past few days of hiding have been really tiring. In this comfortable environment, I quickly lay down and fell asleep. This was my best sleep ever. In my dream, I saw myself in a white world. Then, the surrounding white clouds enveloped me, so comfortable, so soft. Then I heard something, doll. I was awakened from my sleep, feeling like my face was pressed against something. Opening his eyes, it turned out to be Danuakvi. She was frowning angrily at me. Why are you here? As she spoke, she stomped her feet endlessly. I thought she regretted bringing me back, so I gently rubbed her face and looked at her with an uneasy look. You have to stay in the dollhouse. I was stunned and then breathed a sigh of relief. Any room is fine, as long as I'm here, I can do anything. It wasn't until I actually went to the dollhouse that I realized how scary this place was. It was like a scene from a horror movie, filled with dolls and stuffed animals. There are even animal carcasses soaked in liquid medicine. The dim red light made my legs tremble. I turned my head and looked at Danuakvi like a lost, dark girl in a fairy tale. She gave me a cold smile, then closed the door and locked it. I looked at all the things in front of me, unable to understand. How could a 15 to 16-year-old girl be so dark? In this room, I have no concept of time. I just know she locked me up for a long, long time. Until I was so hungry that I almost fainted. From then on I developed a fear of enclosed spaces. Just when I thought I would starve to death, the door was finally opened. Danuakvi wearing a black princess dress appeared in front of me. She didn't say anything, just walked around the room elegantly, looking at each item. Finally, her eyes met mine. My body trembled, I wanted to run away immediately. Hiding from what? Danuakvi tilted her head slightly and asked me with a dissatisfied expression. The room had no windows, seemingly only vents. The red light shined on her, it looked really strange. I gulped, not knowing how to answer properly. She turned around to leave. I quickly mustered up the courage to hold her hand. She stopped, turned her head and looked at me with a bit of hate in her eyes. I tentatively said, Miss, I beg you, I'm about to starve to death. I can do anything I want, I can do anything. Why do her eyes look like she's thinking about something? After a while, she laughed coldly. I felt goosebumps, but she didn't understand what was going on. She took out a knife from somewhere and slashed it across her finger. Blood immediately flowed out, dripping down the fingers. Hurry, eat. She put her finger on my face so that blood dripped down my cheek. I don't know if it was because of the light, but I saw her pupils glowing red, looking very ghostly. Danuakvi, what kind of illness am I? I trembled with fear and begged, Miss, please stop teasing me. I'm scared. I don't know when, tears fell from my eyes. Seeing that, she was a little stunned and then burst out laughing. Laughter echoed in this scary room, sounding so eerie. After a while, I mustered up the courage to look at her. Her eyes were so complicated, I could never understand what she was thinking. She gave me a gentle smile and then used her bloody finger to wipe my tears. I could only cower like a scared rabbit, not daring to move. Tanuok took me to the bathroom and dressed me in a new dress. She told me it was her doll. From now on, I can only wear dresses. If she is happy, she will put on beautiful makeup for me, wear colorful wigs, and take me everywhere. When he arrived at the dining room, the maid had prepared a sumptuous feast. For me, who had been starving for many days, even if I died after this meal, it was worth it, but Tanuokvi hadn't spoken yet. I could only obediently sit to the side, continuously swallowing my saliva. As long as you listen, all of this is yours. Tanuokvi propped her chin and looked at me with interest. After receiving her permission, I couldn't hold back any longer and ate greedily. She just smiled at me, like she was looking at her pet. Because I ate too much, after being hungry for a long time, my stomach ached so much at night that I couldn't sleep. Tonight, Nuokvi, did not throw me into the dollhouse but took me to her room, spreading an expensive carpet on the floor. The carpet is very soft, very comfortable to sleep on, at least more comfortable than under the bridge and in the corner of the sidewalk. Many times, I was in so much pain that I was drenched in sweat, but I didn't dare make any noise, for fear of waking Tanuokvi. If she's not happy, maybe she'll lock me in the dollhouse again. I gritted my teeth, in so much pain that tears welled up in my eyes. Amidst the vague pain, I saw a pair of unidentified legs appear before my eyes. When I started, I don't know when Tanuokvi was standing next to me, still looking at me with an interested expression. At this point, I couldn't hold it in anymore, sobbing and begging, "Miss, save me." She smiled very sweetly in the dark room, with only the moonlight outside the window shining in. I was a bit stunned, temporarily forgetting the pain. She was wearing her latex outfit, squatting next to me, still smiling non-stop. "Why don't you ask me how much you should eat today? If you listen to me, how can it be so painful?" Tanuokvi covered her mouth and smiled like a little girl seeing her favorite doll, extremely happy. She smiled to herself, occasionally sighing as if she regretted that I didn't listen to her. But now I'm about to die of pain. As long as I can survive, I'm willing to do anything. Looking at me for a while, Tanuokvi finally spoke, "Can you obediently listen to me from now on?" I answered with difficulty, evenly, "Listen to what you say." You can imagine how pale my face was at that time. The light in the room turned on. Wearing a medical cap, Tanuokvi quickly appeared at the door. I discovered that next to Tanuokvi seemed to be more dangerous than outside. Her mood is unpredictable and a bit sick. In her eyes, life is as cheap as trash. She only cares about her own feelings. In order to survive, no matter how big or small, I always follow Tanuokvi's arrangements. She told me what to wear and what to eat, I obeyed. Tanuokvi is very knowledgeable. Although he is only 15 to 16 years old, he is smarter than the average student at school. She knows what to eat that is good for health, and she also knows what to eat that can kill others. I was very afraid that she would feel like my life was in her hands, but because I was obedient and more interesting than those small animals and inanimate dolls, she sometimes showed gentleness to me. She bought me a lot of dresses, dressed me like a girl, took me walking around the city, and had afternoon tea at luxury restaurants. In the eyes of others, we are like a pair of very close friends. She's so good at makeup, normal people can't even tell I'm a boy. So she even deliberately pulled me into the women's restroom to see me blush. She found it very interesting. My obedience, my patience, even my flattery all made her happy. So I conveniently stayed by her side until I was 18 years old. "You're 18 years old, I can give you a grown-up gift." Tanuokvi blinked, looked at me, and smiled. "Do you want that princess dress worth 380,000 yuan?" I was stunned, looked into her eyes, judging whether she was joking or not. I don't like wearing dresses, I don't like being turned into a girl, but Tanuakvai is very excited about this. She said dolls should be like that. At this moment, her eyes were filled with laughter. I can be sure that she is in a very good mood right now. This is my ultimate experience after 3 years of being by her side. Tanuak was born on the same day as me. She threw a huge birthday party for me. The people who came to congratulate were all noble people in the world. I don't know anyone, and I don't need to socialize. Because she dressed me up as a beautiful doll, wearing an expensive silk dress and a long pink wig. Just like that, I followed beside her. Everyone said we were twins, best friends. No one understood the sadness in my heart. After that, she asked me again what I wished for. I really want to tell her that I want to be free, want to escape her control, but looking into her deep eyes, I still couldn't tell. So I said, "Can I go to school?" Since my father ran away with the money, I no longer go to school. I really crave school life, but I crave freedom even more. After listening to me, Nuakvai did not answer immediately but sat down on the sofa, crossed her legs elegantly, and looked at me with sparkling eyes. I am Nuakvai, 18 years old, like a brilliant flower in full bloom, with a completely beautiful face like something out of a comic book. The perfect body cannot be hidden anywhere. Her eyes seem to contain the entire starry sky, sparkling with brilliant light. My eyes couldn't leave her feet in black stockings. 3 years of living together feels like one day, and I can't help but feel anxious. But she is Tanuakvai. I don't dare to entertain any thoughts. I was like a child who had done something wrong, bowing my head and standing in front of her. After a moment of silence, she smiled gently, stood in front of me, and used her long fingers to lift my chin. Her breath must be light on my face, tense. Afraid I won't agree? I didn't dare look straight into her eyes, my cheeks were red. She gently stroked my head and said, "Hey, give me a dance, I'll let you go to school." The dance she wants is a cute girly dance. I was often forced by her to learn and then dance for her alone. Every time that happened, I was embarrassed and speechless, but she was always made to laugh. I clenched my fists, sweat pouring out. Because of that rare bit of freedom, I still smiled and danced my favorite dance, Tanuakvai. She curled her lips and smiled, her eyes narrowed like white circles. Tanuakvai worked very quickly and arranged a school for me the next day. But what makes me a little disappointed is that Tanuakvai and I go to the same school and are in the same class. She still didn't give up monitoring me. However, I was still uneasy because I was about to return to school. Anyway, this is considered a new life. During the past 3 years, although I did not go to school, Tanuakvai invited many teachers to my home to tutor me, so my studies were not affected at all. It's just that before school officially started, the beautiful female housekeeper warned her, "I am not allowed to say anything random at school that will harm Tanuakvai or the family. It will lead to very serious consequences." Of course I know that Tanuakvai always appears perfect in front of outsiders. As for that dark face, she has never shown it. Not to mention forcing me to disguise myself as a girl and make her a doll. Before enrolling, I asked Tanuakvai to allow me to wear men's clothes again. If found out at school, it would be embarrassing. Wouldn't that be more interesting? Tanuakvai thought for a moment and then smiled fiercely. I showed an awkward expression, clutched my skirt and said, "I beg you, just this." She looked at me for a long time, until my face turned red. What a pity, they won't get to see such a lovely person like this. Tanuakvai smiled and patted my head. There was a cat ear clip in my hair. "You are my doll, why would I share it with others?" Hearing that, I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to thank her when Tanuakvite sat down on the sofa and stretched her legs towards me. I was a bit confused. She smiled and took off my shoes. "Aren't you used to it?" I was stunned, then slowly squatted down and gently took off her small leather shoes. But when I was taking off the other shoe, her foot stepped on my face. "Even when you go to school, you have to obediently listen to me, you know?" The next day at school, the teacher asked me to come up to the podium and introduce myself. I heard the students from Min below take a breath, then start whispering. "It's been 3 years, this is the first time I've worn men's clothes. I don't even feel familiar with this outfit, because Tanuakvite specially ordered it from a leading French designer, an expensive VC outfit. My hair was also dyed white to look like a prince coming out of a fairy tale. When I looked in the mirror, I was also angry at myself for my own aristocratic appearance, and was stunned for half an hour. Everyone in the class looked at me with surprised and fascinated eyes. If it were 3 years ago, being stared at like that, I would definitely be so scared that my legs would tremble. But now, after going through Tanuakvite's training, I can calmly face it. After introducing myself, I bowed to everyone. Below, a girl shouted, "So handsome!" The whole class exclaimed. This is the Bakma prince of my dreams, finally meeting the noble Nunacht Song from the real world. Hearing these compliments, I felt a bit worried and looked towards Tanuakvite. Her possessiveness is very strong, I'm afraid she won't be happy. But she just sat elegantly on the chair, her beautiful eyes looked at me calmly, and the corner of her mouth seemed to still have a hint of a smile. It seemed like she was also admiring me. My heart, hanging in the air, was finally lowered. From that moment, I felt that Tanuakvite didn't seem so scary anymore. From her eyes, I seemed to see a ray of pride. The pride of the person who raised their pet into a human is completely different from when they were in the doll's house. Therefore, I am less afraid of her in my heart. Gradually, I no longer had the trouble of listening. I no longer pamper her every day, no longer wait by her bedside just to hear a good morning. When she woke up, I was no longer cautious, afraid of accidentally angering her. I began to smile confidently, no longer gloomy like when I made the doll. Now, I am myself. She sensed my change. In front of outsiders, she also doesn't hide her face. Sometimes, she was a little surprised by my change, but then smiled meaningfully. I felt her mood getting better and better, no longer as gloomy as before. I knew she was taking my wish seriously, which was that I wanted to go to school straight. But no matter how I went to school, when I got home, I still had to wear makeup like a doll. However, I was satisfied, at least I had more and more freedom. Gradually, I broke Tanuakvite's bondage. It's strange, Tanuakvite hasn't returned yet. I looked at the clock, it was midnight. Tanuakvite lives a very moderate life, rarely comes home so late, and never spends the night out. For the past 3 years, except for occasionally taking me for a walk, she has almost never left this villa. In this villa, besides her, there is only me. I looked at the storm outside the window, occasionally lightning streaked across the sky. At this moment, I suddenly felt uneasy. I don't know where she went, but I still took the umbrella and planned to go out to look for her. Outside the door, I saw Tanuakvite. She was wearing a gorgeous princess dress and an elegant crown, standing there. She looked a bit dazed, the pouring rain soaked her body, but her face was still extremely beautiful, not looking haggard at all. I don't understand why the butler didn't go with her. I quickly ran to cover her with an umbrella and asked softly, "Miss, what happened?" She slightly raised her head and looked at me for a long time with her deep eyes. We were silent until she fell into my arms. It seemed like this was the first time I hugged her. It was also the first time she showed weakness in front of me. I carried her like Princess Kyo and returned to the room. I gently used a towel to dry the rainwater from her body, muttering, "Why did you drink so much?" She reeked of alcohol and perfume, but was strangely fragrant. Tanuakvai is very clean and does not like a messy house, especially her bed. I'm afraid she'll vomit, so it's good to let her sleep with me on the carpet, so she can experience what it's like to sleep on the floor. Who said she didn't arrange a room for me to sleep in? If she asks, I also have a reason to object. When I woke up, I found it a bit difficult to breathe. Opening my eyes, I saw Tanuakvai hugging me tightly, like she was hugging a large stuffed animal. Her face was buried in my lap. At that moment, a strange feeling rose in my heart. Tanuakvai also seems quite adorable. That day, after waking up, Tanuakvai pinched my face and asked why I didn't carry her to bed but instead let her sleep on the hard floor all night. Isn't there a carpet this thick? After I said that, Tanuakvai's eyes looked at me and stopped a bit. It seems she realized sleeping on the ground was uncomfortable. I thought she would finally arrange a private room for me, but I didn't expect her to have someone put a soft single bed in the room. Her room is very large, adding a bed doesn't take up much space. She said, "You must stay within my sight, even when sleeping." Tanuakvai seems to have changed, but it also doesn't seem to have changed. At home, I'm still her only doll. At school, I can be as free as a normal person. I made new friends and actively participated in different activities. She never got in the way. This feeling of freedom made me start dreaming about my own future. I try to absorb new knowledge and learn different skills so that I can later escape to Tanuakvai and live a new life. While I was enjoying my freedom, Tanuakvai also started to become very busy at school. I rarely see her. Even at home, I only heard her coming back to her room in the middle of the night. But no matter how late she comes home, I can still feel her standing next to the bed looking at me. Tanuakvai has a very sharp business mind, and has now begun to gradually take over the tea. That is her ambition. I'm also happy to be free, no longer being monitored by Tanuakvai. I started interacting with other girls. She was a girl who liked me from the moment I entered school and always surrounded me every day. She is very beautiful, although not as perfect as Tanuakvai. Her smile and eyes are full of gentleness. From her, I felt unprecedented care and love. John Y. and I talked about everything in life. We often eat meals, walk around school together, and become increasingly close. She also hinted at her feelings, but for now I didn't dare to say it clearly because I still hadn't escaped Tanuakvai's control, so I could only consider John Y. as a close friend. For the time being, Tanuakvai still doesn't know about this. She's probably busy with company work right now. The freedom she gave me made me very happy during this time. Then, one day, Tanuakvai left the villa. She didn't tell me where she went. As a young lady, she doesn't need to report to anyone. The next time we meet again is in the schoolyard. At that time, John Y. and I were walking on the field, as usual. A leaf fell on my head. She stood on tiptoe and picked it out, smiling as she adjusted my hair. But I saw a terrifyingly familiar face from the corner of Tanuakvai's eyes. She was standing in the distance, looking at me with cold eyes, the corners of her mouth seemingly raised. Every time she is angry, she has that expression. The fear hidden deep inside my heart rushed back. I quickly backed away, but before I could do anything, Tanuakvai quickly walked in front of me. Her cold eyes remained fixed on me. The smile on the corner of her mouth reminded me of the dollhouse. When she cut off my finger, my body's blood trembled unconsciously. She was really angry, because her doll was stolen by someone else. To her, I am her private property, but John Lai doesn't know that. Seeing Tanuakvai coming with an angry expression, she stood in front of me. What do you want to do? John Lai looked at her with caution. Tanuakvai slowly turned her eyes to John Lai. In her eyes were emotions I couldn't understand. The corner of his mouth curled up in a cold smile. He is mine, Tanuakvai said coldly. John Lai frowned, looked at me and answered without any concession, he is him, not anyone's private property. Hearing that, Tanuakvai burst into laughter. She held my hand tightly, so hard that I felt a bit of pain. Do you want to know why he is mine? Tanuakvai looked at me provocatively, then smiled without any emotion. I raised him like a doll for 3 years. This is something I don't want to talk about. No matter what happened, so I quickly stood on Tanuakvai's side, looking at John Lai with eyes full of guilt. John Lai looked at me with confusion. I shook my head slightly, using my mouth to tell her, I'm okay. Tanuakvai coldly snorted, her face gloomy, and led me home. She didn't lock me in the dollhouse, but took out a whip from inside. She made me wear a dress, kneel on the cold floor, then used the toe of her shoe to lift my chin, looking at me with contemptuous eyes. I thought that after growing up, she became a normal person, at least not as sick as before. But now I've discovered that's just her appearance. In this villa is the real Tanuakvai. Before the whip and gun on the floor, I was scared and didn't dare to move. If he still moves, this whip will not know where to hit anymore. I looked at Tanuakvai with a cold smile. It seemed like she had returned, her old dull-looking eyes. I didn't dare say anything else, I just trembled nonstop. Are you together yet? She asked me. I shook my head. Not yet. Suddenly, she shouted at my feet. I was in so much pain that I couldn't help but scream. So the idea is already there. Tanuakvai's voice sounded gloomy, sounding like she didn't care about my life or death. I don't dare admit it, I'm afraid she won't be happy. What happened next would make me completely lose my life. Tanuakvai laughed coldly and kicked me to the ground. It's fine if you don't have one, remember, you will always be mine alone, Tanuak said. As she grew up, she seemed to be even more cruel than when she was younger, including her possessiveness. If I were her doll, then how much could she tolerate me? That thought suddenly flashed in my mind. Not knowing where I got the courage, I rushed towards her. She clearly didn't expect me to do that, she looked surprised. I pressed her down on the sofa, held her tightly, and kissed her on the lips. This was my first kiss, very awkward but intense. I momentarily forgot everything and just passionately kissed her. What surprised me was that Tanuak did not dodge or hurt me. She just let me kiss her until the fear in my heart overcame my impulse, so I stopped this crazy action. But Tanuak's expression didn't change much, it was still calm. She kept looking at me like that. Finally, a cruel smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. I was scared and ran back to my room. Tanuak returned to his room very late. After taking a shower, she immediately went to bed, completely ignoring me. Wasn't she angry at my desecration? Tanuak did not lock me into a dollhouse, but also did not let me go to school anymore. I am locked in this large villa, and can only see her alone every day. I seem to have lost the freedom again, which took me 3 years to gain. I am not satisfied. Another rainy day, after returning home, Tanuak ignored me and went to take a shower. When she walked out, I was holding a glass of hot milk, obediently waiting next to her. Why do you like being snubbed? Tanuak 6 looked at me with an interested expression. A scene immediately appeared in my mind that made me scared and tremble. One time I went to have afternoon tea with her and was pulled over by several girls wearing princess dresses to take pictures with us. After returning home, she slowly poured a glass of cold milk on my head. Milk flowed all over my body. I took a deep breath and cautiously asked, "Can you let me continue going to school?" Tanuakvai smiled, stepped forward and used her finger to lift my chin, smiling coldly. "Do you really want to go to school, or do you want to go out with girls?" My eyes avoided. She immediately grabbed my face, gradually squeezing it until I was about to cry. She just let go, with a regretful look on her face. She said, "My cutest doll, why don't you obediently listen? You can go back to school, but you have to tell her not to contact each other anymore." She coldly ordered me. I didn't protest at all, just nodded silently. For me, freedom is the most important. "Tam gone." Tanuak 6 called me. When I turned my head, she kissed me on the lips. I wanted to struggle but couldn't resist her strength. Finally, we fell onto the bed. She kept kissing me. It was raining a little outside, but I only heard the two of us breathing heavily in this isolated villa. We hugged each other passionately. After that, I was brought back to school by Tanuakvai, under her eyes. I said goodbye to John Lai. Actually, in my heart, she is a very good, very warm girl. She understands things, is polite, and knows how to respect others. Most importantly, being with her, I feel loved. She is like a pure angel, while Tanuak is like a fallen devil. John Lai, let's not contact anymore in the future. When I said this, my heart hurt like a knife. I thought she would be angry and scold me cruelly, that I was being controlled by a girl. But she didn't. She just smiled warmly and patted my head. "Tam gone, just be yourself." John Lee's eyes seemed to smile. She clasped her hands together and said earnestly, "I hope you are happy every day and live the life you want." At that moment, my emotions completely broke down. Tears kept falling. I said with a trembling voice, "John Lai, thank you." She smiled, shook her head and disappeared from my world. Is she more beautiful than me? Tanuakvai appeared in front of me, the corner of her mouth still holding a cold smile. I was made fun of by her. There are things that cannot be judged by beauty. Furthermore, she is also very beautiful. Tanuakvai's face immediately turned pale. The cold eyes made me unable to help myself. She stepped closer to me, until I leaned against the wall, with no way back. "Tam gone, why don't you understand? When you were about to die, I brought you back and dressed you up like a doll every day. Yet you like someone else?" Tanuakvai seemed a bit impatient. The beautiful face also became distorted. I didn't dare look her straight in the eyes. When I avoided her, she slapped me in the face. "Tam gone," she patted your head twice. What did she rely on? How about I cut off her hand and soak it in the water tank at the dollhouse? The expression on Tanuakvai's face showed that she was not joking. With her powers, she can do absolutely anything she wants. I was so scared that I was shaking, but I was even more afraid that innocent John Lai would be hurt. "Forgive her," I gathered all my courage and begged, trembling. "Do you care about her that much?" Tanuak smiled coldly, continuously making my heart feel even more uneasy. She leaned close to my ear. "You are just my toy. Yet you still dare to ask me." "That's right, since she brought me home, I've just been her toy. Let her arrange it, listen to her arrangements. Just be obedient, one day I will let her live another day." Tanuak 6 looked at me with an amused expression, a smile on her lips carrying arrogance. The so-called obedient thing she talks about is dressing like a doll at home every day, making a doll for her every day, holding her in her arms. That's the doll she wanted. Time passes by. By the time we graduated from college, I was still Tanuakvai's doll. Day by day living life like that. During this time, Tanuakvai grew up with almost demonic talent and speed. After completely taking over to T's power, she mercilessly chased everyone in the family out. Who dares to oppose her? Even if you want to stand aside, you can't. Tanuakvai's father and brother, after going through such ups and downs, couldn't help but scold her, saying that they had worked hard to raise a white-eyed wolf, were too ambitious, and wanted to monopolize the entire corporation. But she still acted unconcerned, as if those two people had nothing to do with her. But I know, this is the real Tanuak. Tanuak 6 is the first woman to hold absolute power in the history of the family. This history was created by her. During the inauguration ceremony, Tanuakvai later invited many famous figures in the world, countless outstanding men to invite her to dance, and she chose the most powerful person. She doesn't care about love, only ambition. Gwynta T. She kept me as her personal secretary. Whenever I made her unhappy, she would punish me directly at the office. I didn't expect to be with Tanuakvai for so many years. While I was bewildered, Mr. Zhou, who had successfully invited Tanuakvai to dance, appeared in front of me and sarcastically whispered, "I advise you to stop dreaming about Tanuakvai. She doesn't care too much about people, she doesn't have a family like yours." I laughed coldly in my heart. With a background like mine, anyone who knows would say the same. Mr. Chu accidentally learned about the relationship between me and Tanuakvai. Mr. Zhou is truly self-conscious. Even with a secretary next to General Tu, he was not confident of winning. Looks like you'll have to endure a lot of resentment in the future. I looked at him without any weakness. This time, Mr. Zhou was so angry that his face turned red. He gritted his teeth and said, "Even though I can't have her heart, someone like you without a family background is even more unworthy. Just jumping around without family background. I really think I belong to Hong Soft." I walked straight up to him and whispered a few words. He immediately showed an expression of disbelief, then cursed and turned to leave. I laughed coldly. I just told him that Tanuakvai hugged me to sleep every night. Yet he had such a big reaction. After the party, the news that Tanuakvai was about to get engaged to the son of the Chu family quickly spread. Even I, when I heard this news, was a bit surprised. One night, she was still holding me tightly in bed. If others saw us, they would definitely think we were a loving couple. But only I know, I have always been just Tanuakvai's toy. How can someone like her have weak love? I asked her, "Are you about to get engaged to Mr. Chu?" She replied, "Yes." I was a bit surprised and continued to ask, "Don't you feel uncomfortable with him?" Tanuakvai thought for a moment, then slowly said, "It's unpleasant, but he can bring me a lot of benefits." I didn't say anything anymore, just quietly looked at her. Tanuakvai is truly beautiful. Whether at school or in the upper class, I have never seen anyone more beautiful than her. She was my saving light when I was starving to death. She kept giving me a rich life, paying off all my debts and warning no one to cause trouble with me. She was the first person to celebrate my birthday. We kiss, hug and sleep every day. I'm just sorry, I can't stand her sick love anymore. The next day, I didn't go to the company, I just stayed home to simply pack my luggage, intending to leave this villa I had lived in for nearly 10 years. Actually, I also wavered. My love for Tanuakvai, although sick, but she treats me well, is real. If she loved me wholeheartedly, perhaps I would soften my heart and volunteer to be by her side as a doll. But she decided to marry someone else. Could it be that after getting married, she still wants me to be by her side every day? I don't want to. While I was packing my things, my phone had countless missed calls from her. I know she's definitely nervous, but there's an important project today. No matter what, she can't leave soon. Until she came home angry late at night, I wore her favorite dress and prepared dinner waiting for her to come home. Seeing that, her anger lessened by half. Why don't you answer the phone? You've disappeared from my sight for a long time. This time, she didn't punish me, she just sat quietly at the dining table. I smiled and poured her a glass of wine. Today is our birthday, did you forget? Tunuakvai was slightly stunned. Since taking over the company, she has been so busy that she no longer remembers birthdays. I'm used to it, it's just a birthday. Tunuakvai looked at the full tray and smiled. Do I owe you a gift? Of course. I shook my head and filled her glass with wine. Her tolerance to alcohol is not very good. Since the time she came back drunk, I heard people say she only had 2 drinks. Happy birthday, Tunuakvai. I raised my glass. Now that I call her by her name, she's not angry. She didn't say anything, just gently clinked her glass with me. I remember you don't know how to cook. Tunuakvai stared at me, but wanted to know something. Want to know? I poured her a glass of wine. After drinking this glass, I will tell you. Tunuakvai thought for a while and then, without hesitation, drank the entire glass of wine. Then she tilted her head to look at me, very cute. She was already starting to get drunk. Her white cheeks were pink, her eyes were a little dreamy. I studied because of you. I leaned close to her ear and gently responded. Seeing her so adorable, I couldn't help but kiss her. She just smiled softly, looking at me. You love me already? I was stunned. I didn't expect her to be so straightforward. You have another drink, I'll tell you, okay? If it was before, if I said that, I would definitely make her unhappy. But today, she is already drunk. Hearing me say that, she immediately picked up a bottle of red wine and took a sip. Before my chest could stop her, she drank 2/3 of the bottle. Say it. Her body began to stagger, but she still tried to look at me, not letting herself fall. I slowly looked at her appearance. She's drunk, so adorable. Since I was brought back by her, it seems like I'm the only one left with her. I leaned close to her ear again and gently said, I love you. Her eyes looked at me with a bit of self-pity. After a long time, he spoke up, so will you always be with me? I won't answer this question, because I'm about to leave. From a very early age, I began to prepare for my departure. I carried her back to the room and handcuffed her to the headboard. I leaned down and kissed her, my fingers constantly moving over her body. She couldn't move, she could only let me do whatever I wanted. She searched for her father and asked, What are you doing? I didn't stop, just said, I lost my shake. This is the last thing I want to do before I leave. She resisted at first until the heat took over. The next morning, when I woke up, Tunuakvai was still sleeping, her face was still a little rosy. I brought my luggage and left this villa. Today the weather is beautiful, the sunlight shines on my face, bringing a warm feeling. Over the years, I had quietly saved enough money to leave and deposited it in an account that only I knew about. When Tunuakvai wakes up, she will never find me again. Half a year later, I was lying on the beach abroad when I saw the news that Tunuakvai handed over the tea to her brother. I can see her brother is just a puppet. She's also not engaged to anyone, but all of that no longer has anything to do with me. For half a year, I lived very comfortably with this amount of money. No one knows who I am, even my identity is fake. But when I put down the phone and picked up the can of soft drink next to me to drink, a familiar female voice rang out behind me. Is there any news from me, doll?